welcome here to the Destination Station Twitter Town Hall. And I want to thank our panelists today. We have, starting over here, excuse me if I get it wrong, but Sharmila Bhattacharya and Jacob Cohen, both of Ames Research Center. And they are experienced researchers that may be able to help answer your questions online. And we also have astronaut Rex Walheim, as well as International Space Station Program Scientist Julie Robinson, and Dwayne Ratliff from the Center for the Advancement of Science in Space. So we have a good selection of panelists to answer these Twitter questions, and I think we're ready now to get ready with the questions. The space station is a treasure for our nation and the world, and we want to see more research conducted on the International Space Station because it truly improves life on Earth, and we want to help uncover the many wonders of your International Space Station. So, after answering the questions, we'll get on to our next event, which will be Rex Walheim signing a few autographs until he has to leave. So, with that, our first question, and that's coming from Angela, and she asked, how does the air stay clean and breathable on the space station? How has the air been able to remain breathable for all these years? And remember, it's at #AskStation is our hashtag. Anybody want to take that one on?
I can take a first stab at it.
Mila?
So the way it stays breathable is that there is a constant scrubbing of carbon dioxide away from, as well as addition of oxygen. There are also filters that help to trap some of the slightly toxic gases which aren't so good for the astronauts. There's also HEPA filters which will take the particulate stuff that may be floating around, and it will capture those so that things are not floating around which would impact, the breathing for the astronauts. So those are some of the ways in which one can keep the environment breathable and clean.
Okay, and I want to remind our panelists that Twitter has 140 characters to it, and my friend Judd over here is trying to type them in. So do your best to keep the answers brief. But thank you, that was a great answer, Mila.
Hey Kelly, I can give you one more short.
Great, thank you.
Watch the experiment called Swing Bed. It's a new technology for scrubbing CO2 that we're testing right now.
All right, so that's Swing Bed.
Swing Bed.
All right, next question. It's from Austin, and he asks, what is more fun or beautiful to look at, the stars or looking back on the Earth? And I think we only have one person to answer that one.
Okay, I'll take that one. The Earth, because if you think about it, altitude is about 250 miles, 240, 250 miles, so you're not a lot closer to the stars. So they don't look a lot brighter, they look about similar to when you're in the mountains in Colorado. So the Earth, there's just nothing like it. You see 1,000 miles in any direction.
Thanks, Rex. Next question. How does spaceflight, and I should say Nick asked this, how does spaceflight affect blood flow in the human body?
What spaceflight does is it lets the fluid be everywhere in the body instead of being down in your feet. And so astronauts get puffy faces and chicken legs. And that blood flow is one of the problems that fluid shift is one of the problems that we see in the astronaut vision loss as part of that problem.
Anybody else on the panel want to add to that?
No.
Rex, you've been there. Okay. Next question. This is from James, and he asks, what are the top 5 medical discoveries that have been made aboard the space station? Julie again.
Sharmila, why don't you tell about yours first?
Okay, all right, sure. So one of the things I think Julie's referring to is that we flew fruit flies a few years ago, and many of you may ask, why fruit flies? But we were looking to see how the immune system changes as a result of spaceflight. And because there have been some observations that there could be decrements in the immune system in humans. So we wanted to use a system like the fly, which is small and you can fly a lot of them, and we found that there were very measurable decrements in the immune system. And because we got 4,000 animals in a box just this big, we got statistically significant data, and all the animals were identical, so it was very clean data. And we found that there was a reduction in blood cell counts, there was a reduction in the ability of the blood cells to phagocytose bacteria. And so, you know, there were all of these things now that we can use as measures to follow up and look to see how we can try and counteract some of these issues. But now I'll let Julie answer the...
And just because I get a lot of experience doing this, I'll give you the tweet version of that, which is immune cells fighting tumors. Pretty cool.
Yes.
She said it in the technically correct way, but that's a good way to summarize it. Definitely another exciting, really exciting discovery is the discovery of bacterial virulence. That some bacteria have new systems turn on that make them more able to cause disease in space. That's giving us all kinds of ways of fighting back at bacteria, and sometimes they're winning that war. Another important discovery is the discovery about astronaut vision impacts from the fluid shifts that are occurring. That's a really important thing to fix before we go beyond. Another very important discovery is the way that space affects bone remodeling. So that's why Amgen has been studying bone loss in space and using that to help us understand bone loss back here. Is that 5? Or am I one short?
I think you're great.
And I'll add one more.
Jacob's bound to have one
yay.
too.
So I think if we're looking at medical, I think there's quite a few different things. But to add to the bone loss, the other thing that you see in space is perfect. Thank you. Is muscle loss and muscle atrophy. And so on the last space shuttle that we had, we flew a rodent experiment with Amgen that actually looked at countermeasures for muscle atrophy, and you'll say, where does that fit within on Earth? Well, bedridden patients get muscle loss and muscle atrophy. We have lots of patients, and this type of countermeasure is really important. It also relates to bone loss. My mom has osteoporosis, so bone loss is important. Medical discoveries also play into the technology that is important. And so you heard in Julie's talk about telemedicine and applications of that. And that is actually medical things. It's not a discovery per se, but the ability to use that comes from space station work.
And I can even add a little bit to that, because ultrasound is one of those ways, and they're actually developing a training program to teach astronauts how to use ultrasound on orbit, and that training program may be spun off for doctors in remote areas of Earth. Next question, please. Okay, from Tom. At English tier, I love it. What does the space station smell like?
I can handle that one. The U.S. side of the space station smells like a clean room. It smells a little different than the space shuttle does, but they have similar. It's not different, but not too different, but it's similar. And the Russian segment smells like the trainers in Russia. They have it's a distinctive smell. It doesn't smell bad. It just smells like you're back in Russia, and it's an interesting smell. I recognized it when I got over it the first time. Wow, yeah, this smells like the trainers we've trained in Russia. Which they have more Velcro and they have more different materials they use, so it smells a little different.
Does anybody else on the panel want to add from a clinical aspect? All right, next question. From KD. What is the most important technological advance achieved on the space station?
So I'm going to take a crack at it. Maybe Julie, you could add a little bit to it. I think that it's a really difficult question when you say what is the most important technological advancements that you have. And you know, if you look at it, we've made advances across space exploration and on station on various areas. So I could give you my favorites, and there are more than one. From the biological sides, we've done a lot of understanding of what it takes to maintain humans in a closed environment, what's called life support. Life support advancements in telemedicine are really critical for technology advancements. But other areas, our robotics, solar cells in terms of what we could use here, the ability to have those materials that we use from them. And so it's a very difficult thing because you have so many technological advancements that are coming out from the space research down to Earth.
I think in the end, for me, you can summarize it as it's the 24/7, 365 operations. All of that life-supporting equipment works, and the astronauts can live there just like it's home.
And I agree, because if we want to go to Mars, we can't turn around and say, hey, I need a new part on Earth, and we've got to get that down. It is harder than it looks, having a completely closed life support system that can operate without breakdowns you can't fix.
And does our CASIS expert have anything about commercial opportunity?
Well, I would certainly echo the comments that have been made. I think all of those are clearly important from a terrestrial perspective. I would add what to watch for, so to speak. Things that we see as being interesting is the genetic variation that we are seeing in microbes, bacteria, as well as, don't discount Earth observation and the opportunities that it provides for humanitarian aspects, crop and agricultural research, understanding natural disasters, and perhaps, potentially in the future, how to predict against those. So there's some to watch for as well.
And another neat one is the alpha magnetic spectrometer, which is up there, and I think the latest count is 13 billion particles that it has pulled out of the heavens right now. And we're yet to hear all the results of what that means, but we're looking forward to hearing them, hopefully this year.
I think their hash is pound AMS.
All right, next question. From Bernie, how does radiation affect the physical condition of the space station?
I can start taking a stab at that one. One of the things that radiation can affect in terms of the physical environment of station is actually electronics. So radiation can impact the smooth functioning of electronics. So when you send electronics up, you actually have to send hardened electronics so that they're somewhat tested on Earth for radiation resistance before sending. So that's one thing I can think of if anyone else has any other.
That's it. Crashes your computers and it makes your eyes flash.
Yes.
The radiation hits your optic nerve and makes you have little comets going in your eye when you're trying to sleep.
It also breaks down some drugs. So, for example, amoxicillin, which probably most people in the room have taken before as an antibiotic, after it's been in space for about 2 days, the radiation has taken out one of those 2 antibiotics, and it's not as effective.
Very interesting.
And it provides a really interesting platform for understanding how you can develop hardened materials for future application, particularly, again, let's give it the commercial slant for commercial satellite hardware application. So certainly there are some negative impacts that we've heard, but it also provides an opportunity for further research and development technology solutions.
And maybe I'll add just a simple one is, you know, if you have a lot of furniture that sits outside in your backyard, it stays there in the sun and it deteriorates for multiple reasons, but mostly it's energy and oxygen that interact with them in that environment. When you take materials up to space, like you see these blankets that occur on the outside of satellites and station, well, the radiation affects that. You get that radiation, the energy, and the excitation of the materials in there. And so you get deterioration. I think Julie had a great slide where it shows materials science studies. Well, station allows you to do that, allows you to look at that. So you could look at the extreme areas, but when you do the extremes, it also applies to day-to-day activities, the lessons that you learn.
Thank you, panel. Next question. From Ardanian Society. We heard the absence of exposure to moon phases can shut down female fertility. What is the truth on this?
Why do I guess the guys don't want this one?
I nor does Sharmila.
So,
That's why we have a diverse panel.
there's no scientific basis for that. So the thing that really affects human biocycles and affects men and women is light. The biorhythms from having sunlight. And on the space station, we deal with that in terms of sleep shifting and the way that we do our ambient light. If we're smarter about that, then the crew's more alert when they need to work and able to sleep at night. But we've not got that completely sorted out yet. When we go to Mars someday, Mars has a longer soul than we do here on Earth. And I think especially in California, people are aware that in operating the Mars rovers, for example, the ops teams wound up essentially working swing shifts, because sooner or later, night was day and day was night, even because they're off cycle from us. And so someday, when astronauts are on Mars, they're really going to have to grapple with that difference in the day-night cycle.
Okay, thank you, panel. Our next question from David, who has a space station pictured on his account. How long does it take for the crew to get to the Soyuz and undock from the space station in an emergency?
Boy, does anybody know the exact time frame? I would say within a couple of hours. I would say they can, actually undock, I think they could do that in a couple of hours. They can safe it much quicker than that. They can close the hatch and be safe if there was deep press in the station. But to get their suits on, undock and all that stuff takes a little bit longer.
And part of it depends on the advance notice that they have.
Right.
And we have early warning systems on most of the things that would cause you to get into that situation.
Right. If there was a conjunction that they're going to hit a piece of space debris or something, you could be in the Soyuz in your suits, and you could close the hatches, and you could undock very quickly from that point.
Next question. From Mornay, is it possible to breed animals aboard the space station?
The easy answer to that is yes. Both fruit flies have multiple generations when we've had them on ISS, and we should let Sharmila talk about that. We've also had fish in multiple generations on the space shuttle, and the Japanese next year will be launching an aquatic habitat. We'll have those again.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, Julie. That's...
And I do know that we've had butterflies that have completed their development from cocoon to butterfly on orbit.
And at the microbial level, you may want to add that we're looking at multi-generational breeding, so to speak, and what those variations may be with respect to exposure to ISS.
Microbes are animals too.
They just have no background.
All right, next question. From Rashid. What recent experiments have been conducted aboard the space station? 140 characters, Julie.
That's hard because there are over 200 active investigations in any 6-month period. So there's a lot going on. You can see that on nasa.gov in the ISS Research and Technology section. The most exciting one this week was robotic refueling mission getting started in this first ops, testing new fueling technologies for going beyond Earth.
The rest of the panel have...
So I'll add a little bit more to it. I think that the beauty of station, and I think Julie mentioned this, it's a floating lab. It's a continuous lab. So if you have a lab, every day there's some research that's being conducted in there. The breadth of the research is quite broad. We have from technology to biology to physical sciences. We here, if you look at the experiments that we did here at Ames Research Center with SDS-135, the last shuttle, we had countermeasure and animal research, plant research, microbial research, water purification systems, the ultrasound system that was discussed that was worked with JSC. All of that in one shot going up there, and that continues and continues. And as we're going to develop the commercial and the international across that, all those research areas are moving forward.
And I would add that one of the really crucial things that the station provides is the opportunity to do iterative science the same way we do laboratories here on Earth. You don't have to wait 5 years for your experiment to refly. You can refly in as little as 6 months.
And maybe I'll add to it, just because that's a perfect other point for station. Typically when you do research on space, when you get results, people say, okay, was it because, we just had a question about moon phases, was it because you didn't have the moon phases or the stars were not aligned correctly? In the microbial work that we did, we had the opportunity to actually have the PI repeat their experiment and get similar results. And that's key, because it says we isolated the various variables of spaceflight, the time the vehicle flew, and so on. So really critical to have a laboratory that allows you to do that on orbit.
Okay. Next question. Oh, is that it?
All right. Well, I want to thank our panelists again for being here for the first NASA Twitter Town Hall associated with Destination Station. And I think it's been a really interesting experience, and I hope that our social media friends out there have enjoyed it. And please give us some feedback on our Twitter and Facebook accounts, and let us know what you think and if we should do more of these. So with that, I'll say thank you very much, and we'll close out the Twitter Town Hall.